is Quinn Nystrom. I'm a city councilor, and I'm running for Congress as a Democrat in Minnesota's 8th Congressional District. And I was calling because I wanted to invite you.
No, we don't go to those things. I'm sorry.
Hello? Who's this?
My name is Quinn Nystrom, and I'm a city councilor, and I'm running for Congress.
I have to stop you because I'm in a hospital right now.
My
husband to come out of surgery, and it's a bad moment.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. For the campaign, a large majority of my time is spent making phone calls.
I guess we've already made the first tranche of donations, and I think there'll be two, maybe three more.
What you realize very quickly is if you want a chance to get a seat in Congress, you need to become very good at being a professional telemarketer. Hi, is this Remy? Because otherwise you don't stand a chance.
Well, here, do me a favor. Just email me your name so I can make a contribution to you.
Okay, I will send you something, and I so appreciate it.
Best of luck.
When I decided that I wanted to run for Congress, I made some calls to people who are very politically active. What they said is, if you are not willing, Quinn, to raise $3 to $5 million, there's no point in running.
Work for the many, not for the money.
Most Americans agree that money is the most problematic part of our political process.
Our Congress people, when they're running for office, spend so much time talking to rich donors that they very easily see the problems of the rich people.
I believe we've got to reduce the influence of money in our politics. And most of you don't like raising money. I know. I've done it.
All right, thank you for coming. Thank you for your support.
That's the money.
I think of it as a banana republic in the sense that the system is about allowing the most wealthy to exploit the system.
The Koch brothers are trying to buy America.
One of their key political aims has been to fight environmental regulations.
Corporations have a lot of money, and political speech comes very cheap to them.
Drug prices are ridiculous in the United States. Why? Because we've sold our soul to the pharmaceutical companies.
There's plenty of evidence of systemic corruption in our democracy.
People are afraid. A large donor could come in and say, if you take a position that I don't agree with, I'm going to be forced to fund a challenger to you in the next race.
It seems pretty clear that if we don't find a way to solve this core problem, we just can't govern. If we can't govern, then we can't adopt policies that make it possible for us to survive.
I'm Pricey Harrison. I'm a member of the North Carolina House of Representatives. I'm a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat. State legislatures really do have a significant impact. In North Carolina, there are 170 of us, 50 in the Senate, and 120 in the House.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Senate Joint Resolution.
Public schools are largely funded at the state level. Environmental regulations, there are a lot at the state level. Gun safety rules, women's reproductive rights, local tax codes, too. So it's a really important role. The very first campaign I ran, unseated an incumbent Republican. That was 2004, and it was about $450,000. I thought it was bad, but it's just gotten so much worse.
Just a moment.
All morning, we've been talking about Super Tuesday.
North Carolina is one of 14 states who are participating in the primaries today, a huge day for the 2020 election.
It's not just a race for president voters have to consider today. There are also a lot of other statewide races here in North Carolina. They include the race for Senate, House of Representatives, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, the General Assembly.
Hello, friends.
Hi.
How are
Hi.
you guys? I mean, how was turnout this morning?
Kind of steady. Not too. I think we have 88 about a few minutes ago. It's
I think that's low.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming out to vote. You're quite welcome.
I'm gonna go vote too.
All right, the strawberry.
I'm a chairperson for the House Democratic Caucus Campaign Committee. And along with 2 other members, we are the chairs of that effort, responsible for overseeing our campaigns, our fundraising, and trying to do what we can to make sure there's a Democratic majority. Most people don't pay attention to local media. There's a declining amount of local media coverage in newspapers and other sources. So when you're running for a local office, you're trying to compete for the attention of voters who have no idea who you are and what you do. And it takes a lot of money to be able to get those voters to pay attention to what you're doing. In North Carolina, in a competitive state house race, we have spent anywhere from $250,000 up to $1 million to be able to win a single state house seat.
When I was growing up, I fell in love with the idea that you could use the law to pursue fairness and opportunity.
The money is used mostly for paid communications.
I've never forgotten where I came from or how
digital communications, radio, television.
People who say our schools are broken don't notice what really happens here. This is where North Carolina comes together. This is where North Carolina comes to school.
One of my political mentors told me when I first ran, he said, take money from anyone who will give it to you and then vote how you think the right way to vote is and let them decide whether they'll give you a donation the second time or not.
Money is the mother's milk of American politics. And the way you have to look at American politics is that it is the most free market system that exists on the face of the earth. I'm Paul Shoemaker. I'm a longtime Republican political consultant, state of North Carolina. Hey, Andy, how you doing? He had image advantage, but his intensity was very weak in the survey that we did, so you know. He was totally non-existent in the canvas that we did. He was not even a factor. He was in the bottom tier, bottom 3, bottom 4 all the time. I've done hundreds of legislative races, could not tell you how many. Numerous congressional races, both U.S. senators are clients of mine. The whole Democratic strategy is trying to make this election cycle all about us and nothing about them, right, and not to even comment on the narrative. But they're not going. I started working for Senator Tillis back in 2006. I was the lead strategist on his U.S. Senate race in 2014, and I'm the lead consultant for the 2020 re-election campaign.
That's the total weekly quota.
Okay. Quota of what?
Phone calls.
Phone calls.
Contacts.
What was the door rate when you were doing the doors?
I think it was a little bit higher than this, but not, it wasn't like it was twice as high in terms of the ratio.
We will spend out of our media budget probably 90% on traditional broadcast, cable, satellites, and streaming videos. In 2014, we had the most expensive Senate race here, Tom Tillis's race, first election that was in the history of the United States. Expending it was around $120 million in that race.
Tom understands the importance of U.S. leadership in the world today. He believes in American exceptionalism, unlike some in Washington.
In 2016, New Hampshire U.S. Senate race broke that record with over $126 million spent.
Kelly Ayotte is a tough national security leader and wife of a combat veteran.
2018, Senator Rick Scott, who was then the governor of the state of Florida, broke that record with over $160 million being spent in the U.S. Senate race.
Governor Scott, he's leading hurricane recovery, directing relief efforts, and even housing state troopers in his own home.
Big numbers because it's a big economy. and it's big outcomes. I mean, there's high reward and there's high losses depending on the policies that are set forth. You have the policies that are shaped in Congress that dramatically impact how a company can engage in business activities. You can look at financial markets, banking industry, regulations, and everything.
I had a fundraiser in November. I don't like asking people for money. So since I've been running for office for 15 years, I just invited a lot of my campaign supporters and loyal Democrats to a good friend's house. I am parked behind a really good liberal car, I can see. How are you? Come on in. How are you? I really appreciate your doing this.
We're excited.
Yeah.
It gets a little smoother with Nick's partnership. He's doing
Yeah, wow. We just hope to raise as much money as we can from our re-election campaign. Hey, Gary, thank you for coming. Thank you for your support. You got a great crowd. I think beyond capacity, but it's going to be fun. Hey, thank you for coming and for all you do for Democrats.
Been successful for a long time.
That's the money.
Thank you for coming. I didn't expect you to send me a check. You were coming as my guest, but well, you brought another one. I appreciate your support. So we're still adjusting. I think I raised about $70,000, which is a pretty decent amount.
Come meet our Chief Justice.
Cherry Beasley is the Chief Justice of our North Carolina Supreme Court, which is the highest court in our state. I'm so glad you could make it. In North Carolina, at the state level and the local level, we elect our judges. I just wanted to make sure she got the credit she deserves. So I was hoping that by introducing Chief Justice Cherry Beasley to my donors, that they would in turn support her campaign.
It's sort of disarming that judges have to raise money, but we really do. And so I'm asking all of Pricey's friends to be my friends as well. I will tell you this.
And I'm so grateful to all of you all, because I know every single one of you get hit up for contributions all the time, and what you're doing is so important to taking back our state and making it the beacon of enlightenment. We're going to take the majority, definitely in 2020, with your help. So. I don't like the influence of campaign money at the policymaking level. I think of campaign money as being a huge problem.
It's illegal for a donor to say, if you're not with us on this vote, then we're going to take our donations away from you in the next election. So the pressure tends to come in more opaque forms, through rumors from someone that you know, but isn't actually the donor. The rumor will come around and say, so-and-so corporation is very upset about the caucus position on this vote, and I think it's really going to impact their involvement in next year's elections. So the threat is made through a roundabout way.
When it comes time to vote on something that may be adverse to the interests of the wealthy donors who you are going to have to go back to next week and ask for more money, that is going to have an impact.
Duke Energy is an electric utility. It is the biggest electric utility in the nation. In North Carolina, is known as a regulated monopoly. Duke serves more than 90% of all households, businesses, and industries residing in the state.
Today, we can connect more. At Duke Energy, we're doing more too. So no matter how much you do, we're always here with power for your life.
Senate Bill 559 was introduced by Republican and Democratic leaders in the state. Part one wasn't very controversial, but the second part would have first allowed Duke to pursue multi-year rate making, which means they could get up to 5 years of approval for billions of dollars of costs and not have much accountability after that. That section would have allowed Duke to earn up to 1.5% greater profit above their currently allowed profit margin. Overall, it was estimated that that part of the bill could have led to billions of dollars in extra costs for ratepayers over the next decade. Once a vote was actually made in the Senate, we were able to really analyze how Duke's campaign donations influenced votes on that one specific bill. The most striking finding was that senators who voted yes in support of the Senate Bill 559 received $568,150 over the last decade. Those who voted no received only $57,550, meaning that those who supported the bill received nearly 10 times more in campaign donations over the last decade than those who opposed it. Duke was using those donations extremely strategically. More than 3/4 of all their donations went to legislators who held top leadership positions in the Senate and top committee positions in those committees where the bill had to pass through.
Sometimes large donors have an impact on the way that a caucus thinks, or a specific leader, a committee chairman thinks. Because when you're in a leadership position for your political party, you're not just worried about your own election, you're worried about, are these donors going to support all of my colleagues that I need to keep here, or that all the people that I want to elect?
Back in 2002-03, there was an effort to require Duke to clean up its air emissions because a lot of pollution comes from the smokestacks. And I remember talking to a senator about just how important this legislation was, and his response to me was, how can I vote with the environmentalists when they're writing me $250 checks and Duke Energy is writing me $4,000 checks?
The system as it currently exists is a sort of a Frankenstein monster. I don't think anybody, if they were to try and create a campaign finance system from scratch, would create a system like what we have in the US. There are a number of different entities in our campaign finance system, and they are confusing. The first is a candidate and their campaign committee. Candidates campaign committee can only accept contributions from individuals. They can't accept money from corporations or from unions, and they can only accept up to $2,800 per individual, per election. Then there are PACs, political action committees. Corporations have PACs. Corporate funds cannot be deposited into the PAC account, but a corporation's executives and its board members can contribute to PACs, and then the corporate PACs will make contributions to candidates. PACs can accept contributions of up to $5,000 per individual, and they can make contributions of up to $5,000 per candidate. Then there are also the party committees, the Republican National Committee, the Democratic National Committee, and those party committees can accept much larger contributions, above $30,000, which can then be used to support the party's candidates. Polls consistently show that both Republican and Democratic voters think that money has too much influence in politics. They want stronger campaign finance laws. But the problem is that over the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen the incremental dismantling of campaign finance laws by the Supreme Court.
The U.S. Supreme Court today overturned laws on the books for nearly a century and ruled that corporations can spend freely now on political campaigns.
The ruling is a victory for the backers of a documentary called Hillary the Movie.
She's deceitful. She'll make up any story, lie about anything, as long as it serves her purpose of the moment.
The government blocked it from TV last year because it was made with corporate money.
In Citizens United, the court held that corporations also can engage in political speech because they stand in for the people who are behind the corporations. Those people all have speech rights, and if they choose to use a corporation to exercise their speech rights, then you can't limit what the corporation can spend its money on.
Citizens United, in my mind, is the worst U.S. Supreme Court decision, certainly in my lifetime, and would rank as one of the worst in this nation's history.
Last week, the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. I don't think American elections should be bankrolled by America's most powerful interests.
The vote on Citizens United came down on, long partisan lines. There was 5 conservative justices, 4 liberal justices against it.
As a result of the Citizens United decision, we have these entities that are known as super PACs, super political action committees, because they can take in unlimited amounts of money and they can spend unlimited amounts of money. Whatever they can raise, they can spend. The super PACs don't give money to the candidates. They do their own spending. They run their own ads. It's all done independently of the candidates. Going back to 1976, the court has held that there is an inherent risk of corruption in unlimited contributions that go directly to candidates. So right now, the contribution limit is $2,800. So you can't give $3,000 directly to a candidate, but you could give $3 million to a super PAC that is doing nothing but advocating directly for that very same candidate.
He announced his retirement right near the end of the filing period, and there is a multi-candidate race to succeed him.
Super PACs are actually allowed to expressly advocate the election of or the defeat of a particular candidate, but they cannot coordinate on messaging as it relates to the content of the message, the timing of the message, and the medium of the message. In other words, what type of message. All the messaging has to be totally independent.
All these contested primaries is actually a good sign.
How's fundraising?
It's coming.
That is a projection by the Associated Press and NBC News that Tom Tillis has won this race and will go on to the November ballot. Senator Tillis's first run at this was very expensive, if not the most expensive, one of the most expensive U.S. Senate races.
And we're still getting more support and more.
In 2014, spending was around $120 million in that race. Canada spending out of that $120 million was about 20%. 80% was outside spending. We had those multiple groups that were out there.
Yeah.
Both sides were enormously funded, and it just creates a very negative campaign. That's the problem in this country.
Hagan voted for gun control, so liberal billionaires throw millions at her campaign. That's how it works. But we know better. And on November 4th, we'll defeat Kay Hagan, because our freedom depends on it. The NRA Institute for Legislative Action is responsible for the content of this advertising.
North Carolina can count on Kay Hagan.
She protects my Medicare and Social Security. I've read that Speaker Tom Tillis sides with insurance companies.
He let insurance companies deny coverage if I get sick.
Senate Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
In reality, super PACs often operate as appendages of campaigns or appendages of party leaders in Congress. And the independence that super PACs pledge to is often a fiction.
The candidate, when these negative ads come out, can say, I didn't run the ads. I don't support this kind of negative campaigning. I'm very positive, but they're independent. I can't do anything about that. By definition, by law, I cannot communicate with them, even though we know generally that that's a farce. It's actually very easy for these groups to coordinate, to hire the same consultants, for example, so the consultant knows what the campaign is doing and what the outside groups are doing.
The FEC, in the 10 years since Citizens United, has never found that a super PAC has unlawfully coordinated with the candidate that it supported.
We have a lot of ideological battles here at the FEC. Sometimes we just can't get a majority vote. Good morning. The open meeting of the Federal Election Commission for Thursday, April 11th, 2019 will come to order. Sorry for the slight delay.
The Federal Election Commission is composed of 3 Republican commissioners and 3 Democratic commissioners.
Have a very interesting agenda. It takes 4 votes to start any investigation, to issue any penalties, to provide any guidance, or to do any rulemaking. All of that requires 4 votes, has to be done on a bipartisan basis. And if we can't get 4 votes, then we can't start the investigation.
Obviously, people should put out their ideal, but I think that's probably not going to garner 4 votes for a whole variety of reasons, which I'm happy to get into if anybody would like. But that I don't see that getting 4 votes, just to be completely candid. Another issue.
Always appreciate your candor, Commissioner. Campaign finance has become a very partisan issue. Republicans do not like the campaign finance legislation. We did have a recent example involving the Hillary Clinton campaign and a large super PAC.
Never quit, never lose faith, never stop fighting for others.
The Democrats on the commission wanted to investigate it. The Republicans on the commission blocked the investigation. So it's an ideological divide. It's just a very different view of whether it is good to have campaign finance laws, whether it is good to have any kind of restrictions, and how strongly we're going to enforce those laws. A motion for Republicans are more concerned with protecting people's First Amendment rights, and they are less concerned with the potential for corruption.
A lot of our campaign finance laws are built around the First Amendment. It's part of the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. And it says, the right of the people to free speech, to practice of religion, to petition their government should not be infringed. This is sort of the core of American free speech laws. So a lot of attempted regulations have been thrown out because they're seen to infringe on your right to unimpeded discussion, debate, and influence in the government.
The problem, though, is that the court has treated money as the equivalent of speech, that there's no distinction between me talking about an issue and me spending money to influence an issue or to influence a candidate. And I think that's where the court has gone wrong.
Before super PACs, that was already a problem because it was no more than about 150,000 people who were giving enough money to matter in that system. But now, after super PACs, it's not just this small number, 150,000 out of 330 million. It's now 100 people who are essentially the critical funders behind the most powerful super PACs.
Money actually allows individuals who want to express their political views the ability to go out there and communicate with a broader audience. I think more speech, more discussion leads to a better outcome. And so we should be encouraging participation, not trying to limit participation.
Everybody has this right to speech. The problem is that some have much more of a right to free speech than others.
Start with my Secretary of Education. My Secretary of Education will be someone who has taught in public school.
Most of these people running for president are people I've met at least once. Joe Biden, I've been to a number of party events where he was speaking and, meeting with large donors and talking to people.
After he knew that, he bought it.
And then he said he was proud of his...
It's a completely different world between the rich donors and between all of the regular Americans.
And then doesn't pass because...
I retired about 5 years ago from a financial services company. I donate a few $100,000 per year to the political candidates that I'm working with. I don't have to go wait in line to talk to my senators or congresspeople. I just wait for them to call me and ask for permission to get an appointment to come to my office and talk to me about what I want. And I don't like that system. I've met many times with the leaders of the Democratic parties. I've met many times with Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States. And they meet with us, frankly, not because I'm their best friend. They meet with me because I'm a major donor and I'm the head of a group that includes lots of major donors. Currently, I'm the chairman of the board of the Patriotic Millionaires. The Patriotic Millionaires stands for the idea that we, wealthy people, actually are in favor of progressive policies.
To my fellow millionaires and billionaires, stop using the campaign contributions to rig the system against the middle class. Stop using your money to buy more influence and using your influence to make more money.
Unfortunately, there's a big part of our country that are people who honestly believe that rich people should have more influence than regular people in politics. And those people have huge amounts of money that they are willing and able to spend on politics.
The Koch brothers have made billions and want to ensure the government doesn't limit their ability to make more. Koch Industries is the second largest private corporation in the U.S. They've made those billions through coal, chemicals, and oil.
At Koch, our 130,000 global employees make things like the fuels to fill your tank. Koch, we make that.
There are few people in the country over the last 20 to 30 years who have had more political influence than Charles and David Koch. They have spent decades building up an infrastructure, building up a money machine that for a long time was almost unparalleled on the left or the right.
Americans for Prosperity is the flagship group in that network, and it has spent tens of millions of dollars in elections.
Iowa is on the right track, but Fred Hubbell would take us in the wrong direction. He opposed thousands of dollars in federal tax cuts for Iowa families, said he would have vetoed tax cuts Governor Reynolds signed, and actually wants to raise our taxes. Vote against Fred Hubbell.
The Koch brothers benefit from the investment that they've made in political spending because they profit from the fossil fuel industry. And making sure that that is protected, that no action is taken to curb the use of fossil fuels, benefits them.
We were told our fossil fuel usage would bring ecological disaster on a cataclysmic scale. Earth was supposed to be uninhabitable by now. Yet, life is better than ever. People around the world have climbed out of unspeakable poverty. By any measure, our environment is better than it's ever been. This, all powered by coal, oil, and natural gas.
People forget, but that in 2008, when Barack Obama was elected, his opponent, John McCain, also believed in climate change, also had a climate change package.
Among environmental dangers, it's surely the most serious of all. Whether we call it climate change or global warming, in the end, we're all left with the same set of facts.
I believe that climate change is real. It's not just a greenhouse gas issue, it's a national security issue. We have an obligation to future generations to take action and fix it.
I'm John McCain, and I approve this message.
The Republican Party and the Democratic Party both believed climate change was real, it was caused by human beings, and the government needed to step up to address it. The Koch brothers, they made it known in the Republican Party that any Republican who gave any credence to the climate change argument would find himself or herself challenged in the primary. And the Koch brothers would fund the primary challenge.
The Kochs and their partners spent at least $40 million in the 2010 U.S. elections.
I'm proud to be one of the hundreds of lawmakers on all levels of government to sign the Americans for Prosperity No Climate Tax Pledge. This pledge states clearly that climate change legislation should not be used to fund a dramatic expansion in the size and scope of government.
And almost overnight, you went from a party where a significant majority acknowledged the truth of climate change to a party where almost no one was willing to acknowledge the truth of climate change because they knew that if they did, they were dead.
I'm Nancy Pelosi, lifelong Democrat and Speaker of the House.
And I'm Newt Gingrich, lifelong Republican, and I used to be Speaker.
We don't always see eye to eye, do we, Newt?
No, but we do agree our country must take action to address climate change.
That was a striking ad for me, striking ad for, I think, a lot of Republicans around the country.
Well, first of all, it's probably the dumbest single thing I've done in recent years. It is inexplicable. I actually don't know whether global warming is occurring.
So here was an example of just a couple billionaires threatening to spend money in our political system to change a fundamental policy choice in a way that made it impossible for a decade, maybe 2 decades, for America to even address the question.
So Obama's talking about all of this with the global warming and that. A lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Thank you.
Should we make sure that the city staff will be there too, since they're the ones that are
Tim is working on that.
Okay.
We are not immune to the influence of money in our party. When the Democrats were in control, it was difficult getting bills passed that certain special interests like Duke or drug companies were opposed to.
Hey, it's Pricey Harrison calling.
And I see it at the state level. I see it at the federal level much worse.
The way that the pharmaceutical company operates is a good illustration of the way that money and influence operates in Washington, D.C. The pharmaceutical industry spends an enormous amount of money on campaign contributions and lobbying Congress, and they wouldn't be doing that if they weren't getting something in return.
There's money flowing everywhere, just an unimaginable amount of money going into political races. The pharmaceutical industry as a whole gives, in a typical year, about $30 million to American politicians in Washington.
Type 1 diabetes is very complicated. My pancreas, for all intents and purposes, is dead. It no longer produces insulin. I have to think about it every single day, every single hour. It is like our oxygen to breathe. If we don't have insulin, we will die. In the late 1990s, the cost of a vial of insulin was around $16. Now, it has increased over 1,200%. It's $340 to buy that. People can no longer afford it. A Yale study came out this last year saying that 1 in 4 insulin-dependent diabetics in the United States are rationing their insulin.
26-year-olds are not supposed to die because they don't have insulin. But without insurance, Alex Smith couldn't afford the $1,300 a month to control his diabetes. So he tried rationing his insulin. Empty vials found near his body.
The child that I gave birth to, my flesh and blood, I lost him because of pharmaceutical greed.
Those companies, sadly, they're playing in the sandbox that was created for them. Who I'm really upset with is our elected officials. They are the ones who have the power to change our laws.
The nays are 51.
Has it been corrupt and greedy? Yes. Do those politicians accept the money? Yes.
A lot of the way it works is in not so much getting particular bills to be passed in Congress, getting particular legislation to be written and brought to the floor and turned into law. I think a lot of it is in the negative sense. It keeps things from happening. It keeps bad things from happening from the pharmaceutical company's point of view.
The cost of providing a drug in the United States will almost always certainly be higher than other countries because of the standards that we have here, the legal system. Many people right now want to take the easy way out and say, let's just go find an international reference price that has been done by basically a country mandating a certain price point and adopt that as our price point. I, for one, think if we use that simplistic approach to addressing a serious problem that we may need to make progress on, that you're going to see innovation dry up. In today's world where we have COVID, if we're not careful with the way we implement policies, then our medical community, our scientists would have fewer resources to try and advance research for vaccines and therapeutics to fight COVID and future viruses. If all we do is look at one side of the equation, then we are potentially going to do harm to our ability to innovate and actually save lives.
Humalog and Novolog, which are made from two of the biggest manufacturers, Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, their price increases have gone lockstep together. Can't even see they're two different lines. Nothing has changed. We've had no advancements. If you go right across the Canadian border, that same vial costs you $30 US dollars. Same exact vial.
Pharmaceutical industry is very important to the state of North Carolina. Tens of thousands of jobs, hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue are created for this state and here within North Carolina. It is a natural process for them to financially support a senator.
First, we're gonna hear from the raging grannies.
Where does your money come from? Pork barrel tillers, your bankers are coming undone. Pork barrel tillers, Big Pharma is paying you off. Pork barrel tillers, small donors you clearly remove.
Since the 2014 election, there has been a weekly demonstration at our state capitol in Raleigh called Tuesdays with Tillis. It's a bunch of people who have gotten together to sort of call attention to issues that they have with the U.S. senators.
Smiles, we just want you out of the Senate. We've been waiting a long while.
Let's just come as close as we can so that you can hear our great speaker. Bob Phillips is the Executive Director of Common Cause North Carolina.
Thank you, Karen. One of the central issues
in this upcoming election for this U.S. Senate campaign is money. You all have been with us. We obviously have fought for trying to get better laws with regards to money in politics, but Citizens United has unfortunately made it so much harder. We want our mind made up. A lot of people wonder, well, if they're taking money from wealthy special interests, what does that mean for that person's ability to serve all of us?
The vast majority of the support that I receive are from individuals, from business industries that I support, agriculture in North Carolina. I have great support from farm groups and organized groups that represent the voices of farmers. I have great support from business groups who represent the voices of small businesses. And I'm not going to apologize for that support. I think it's critically important because the policies that I've focused on have been on creating jobs.
Work for the many, not for the money. Work for the many, not for the money.
It's not about the money, it's about how the candidates themselves line up ideologically, be it financial institutions, be it pharmaceuticals, be it gun safety laws. If somebody comes to me and they want to run for office, then I want to ask you, what do you stand for? What do you represent? Where are you in that political spectrum? You know, what's important to you? Because if you're going to have to generate resources, you need to go to those organizations that agree with where you are. They're going to put money into candidates who agree with them on their position, or they feel like candidates are already there. As Americans say, birds of a feather flock together.
There was a very famous criminal political boss in American history called Boss Tweed. Boss Tweed used to say, I don't care who does the electing, as long as I get to do the nominating. You can say everybody gets to elect, but if he gets to pick the candidates, then he effectively controls the government. Well, we've created the same sort of system now, except with money. The candidates we get to vote for are people who have been chosen by the people who decide who they're going to fund.
Individuals reaching the gate at the 3rd precinct.
In a world full of chaos, leadership matters.
I am your president.
Strong, steady, local leadership by Republicans across the country is helping to heal our nation, all while liberal activists stoke the flames of fear and lawlessness. That's why it's more important than ever for Republicans to win races and flip seats. Sign our petition and stand with us against liberal lawlessness.
Every election is important. This one probably is more important than most because this time we really do have two sides with radically different ideas of what America should be like.
Please leave a message after the beep.
This is Greg Meyer, the state representative. I just wanted to call and say thank you so much for sending a generous donation earlier this month. I'd love to talk to y'all, meet you, hear a little bit about why you're paying attention to state legislative races in 2020. Thank you. Democrats have a much more organized approach towards 2020, in part in response to how effective the Republicans were in 2010.
In 2010, I don't think people did fully understand exactly how important that election was going to be. A handful of Republican strategists, they certainly understood how important that election could be. If Democrats could have a redo on any election in our recent past, it would probably be 2010.
In the United States, election years that end with a zero, 2010, 2020, 2030, are more important. They carry more weight than other election cycles. And that's because the United States does, by our Constitution, a census of our entire country in every 0 year. We try to count every person who lives in the United States, and a lot is dependent on that. For example, North Carolina has gained about 1 million people over the last decade. So North Carolina will now get a new seat in the United States House of Representatives. And then for the legislative districts, they will also be redistricted. It is done by the state legislature.
Politicians are interested in using these new lines to try to cement themselves in power for as much as the next decade. That's called gerrymandering.
After all I've done, I can't believe I'm still best known for gerrymandering. And I can't believe that after 200 years, you still let gerrymandering happen. I mean, you actually still let politicians draw their own voting maps? Oh, brother.
Gerrymandering is a word that's been, in our lexicon for a couple centuries, named after Massachusetts Governor Elbridge Gerry.
Way back in 1812, when my party was in control of the Massachusetts legislature, we redrew the state's voting maps to unfairly favor our own party. Some wise guy at the local newspaper thought the map looked like a salamander, threw that together with my name, Gary, and coined the word gerrymander, or gerrymander, as most people say today.
The way gerrymandering has worked in North Carolina historically, it's packing African-American voters who tend to overwhelmingly vote Democratic into as few districts as possible. Whichever party wins control of our legislature, they have what we call the power of the pen.
If you want to move, say, a lot of Democrats into one district, you can't physically move them, so you have to draw them in. And that's where you get the strange district.
This is one of my favorite districts that was drawn by Republicans after the 2010. Every single one of these squiggles, right, is a line that is drawn that is including people and excluding people. Let's say you have a 50-50, evenly divided state. These 10 blue Legos represent Democrats, and these 10 red Legos representing Republicans. Let's say the Republicans are drawing the map. They will start by packing as many of the Democratic voters as they can. These districts, remember, have to be equal. So here is an 80% Democratic district. Then you crack the rest of the Democrats among the remaining 3. We'll put 2 here, we'll put 2 here, and we'll put 2 here. So when you then are handing out your Republican votes, you might put a handful of Republicans in that district. And then you have enough so that when you spread them across all of these other districts, you've created one district that Democrats win overwhelmingly, and you've created the other 3 that Republicans win much more closely. This is how you can turn a 50-50 state into a 75-25 advantage. Redmap was the name of the Republican redistricting strategy in 2010.
Redmap was something I had never heard of in 2010. It was a masterful plan and beautifully executed. I think there were Democrats across the country and certainly across North Carolina who were just shell-shocked the day after the election.
Redmap in many ways is the biggest heist in modern American politics. The Republicans toured the entire country talking to big donors in oil, in healthcare, in business. They say for $30 million, we can lock in a more corporate-friendly set of policies in all of these states and give ourselves a leg up in Congress for another decade. A lot of these donors said, absolutely, here's my checkbook. The largest contributor is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, just under $4 million. What you also see are a lot of tobacco companies like Altria. Altria donated just over $1.4 million. Another tobacco company, Reynolds American, right underneath that, just over $1.3 million. There's a number of pharmaceutical companies. Eli Lilly at $223,000. The $30 million that Redmap cost, they would push it out often to local allies and statewide allies on the ground. In North Carolina, one of the key groups was called Real Jobs North Carolina. They sent $1.25 million down to Real Jobs NC, which is led by a conservative businessman named Art Pope.
Art Pope is a wealthy individual from North Carolina. His family has made a lot of money on dollar stores.
His father's created a dime store empire, catering really to working class, lower class. He's born into a very wealthy family, but he thinks that he's a self-made man. He feels like he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Anybody else can do it. His whole ideology is based on that premise. Very anti-government and pro-business.
I've known Art going back since 1984. Very successful business person who understands the economic and has a very strong conservative philosophy as it relates to the economic side of it. He's been very politically active.
People say, well, Art, why do you support conservative causes? Why do you support Republican candidates unless you think it has an impact? Of course I think it has an impact.
It's businesses that create real jobs, not bigger government. It's time we got government off our backs, put people back to work, and made North Carolina job-friendly again.
Real Jobs NC sponsored this ad.
State races are smaller, they're more local, and they generally cost a lot less money.
Expand government, hurt our business.
Pope and groups that were closely related to him, they spent about $2.2 million.
It's time we got government off our backs, put people back to work, and made North Carolina job-friendly again.
I was the lead strategist, so I oversaw the polling and the message development. We had a target list of candidates that we were going through, and we were running our ads in those districts.
Times are tough. Many people are just getting by. Things are so bad, Democrat Tony Forrest even voted to cut money for teachers. But fishing piers? Now they're special. Tony Forrest voted to build a $25 million luxury fishing pier.
Real Jobs NC sponsored this ad.
You had the Democratic Majority Leader of the North Carolina House. We went on his district.
When Democrat legislator Hugh Holloman voted for a $1 billion tax increase, it hurt businesses, it hurt our families, it cost us jobs. Hugh Holloman, his tax increases hurt our jobs.
We'll release a poll showing that he was 20 points down, 25 points down. And by September, he was toast. We had beat him. People did not want to invest in him. So we used those communications to help dry up their money while we still had more money coming into these races. It was a strategic approach, so yeah.
It was much broader. More people were targeted, smeared by this kind of advertising than we had seen before in North Carolina. They targeted about 27, as I recall, 22 of them won. So they were very triumphant.
It would not be hyperbole to call last night's election results seismic.
For the first time in more than a century, the Republican Party has control of North Carolina's General Assembly.
They won these 107 key races in North Carolina, in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Ohio, in Florida. Those races tilted control of legislative chambers from the Democrats to the Republicans in many cases.
So when the Republicans won control in 2010 and then drew maps in 2011, that next election in 2012 and subsequent elections, well, they gained even more seats in the North Carolina General Assembly.
In Wisconsin in 2018, voters gave Democratic Assembly candidates at their state house almost 200,000 more votes than Republicans, and yet, who's in charge of the state legislature? Republicans. This has been the story that's repeated itself in state after state this entire decade. This is what Redmap created.
Tonight, you voted for action, not politics as usual.
The national effect of Redmap is huge. In 2012, Americans re-elect Barack Obama. And they give Democratic US House candidates 1.4 million more votes than Republicans. And yet, Republicans control the House, and it's not even close. The numbers are 234-201. This is the power of these district lines. Barack Obama's second-term agenda is over. It's finished. It's dead on the night that he is reelected to a second term. Eric Holder, who was Barack Obama's attorney general, told me that he and Obama have a meeting in the White House, and they're looking at the numbers, and they can't figure it out. They didn't even understand what had hit them. They hadn't understood or even heard of Redmap. We are in another census year right now. If Democrats were asleep in 2010, they are wide awake now. The money's coming from all over the place. There will be a whole lot more of it.
Now it's just an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery being the essence of getting the nominations for president or the elected president. And the same thing applies to governors and U.S. senators and Congress members.
Most people would say, oh, no. It's not a bribe. First of all, it's legal. This is allowed in the United States. And we don't tell the politicians what to do.
It's all oriented toward money. It limits the number of candidates who can run. It limits the agenda that gets political debate. It is legalized bribery to say, I'm going to give you $10,000 and I don't expect anything. They do expect in return.
Some mornings it's hard to get up. I mean, when you look at the landscape of political reform in the United States, especially when it comes to money in politics, the vast majority of changes in almost the last 20 years have been in favor of massive, unlimited contributions, less disclosure.
There are two types of political money. There are reported contributions where the public knows who gave this money, and then there's what we call dark money. And that's what I see as more of a threat to democracy.
Dark money is using nonprofit organizations as a shield for disclosure of donors. So using nonprofit groups as political entities to shield the identities of corporate donors, of wealthy individual donors who don't want their fingerprints on the political spending.
If you're used to doing money in politics reporting, throw everything that you know out of the door, because there is no one-stop shop for dark money reporting. Your main objective is always to be piecing together a narrative from all of these little scraps that you're going to find all over the place. And a lot of those things...
Say you're a wealthy donor and you want to spend $2 million in a Senate election. You find a tax lawyer who can establish social welfare nonprofit.
So they'll tell you how much they're spending.
Social welfare is anything that is advocating for particular policies. So the National Rifle Association as a social welfare organization because it exists to promote the Second Amendment and the right to own and keep arms.
We are here because we all believe in one thing, in protecting the Second Amendment and the freedoms that we all love and enjoy.
You have the power, you have the right to protect yourself and your family.
Planned Parenthood protects the right to abortion.
In the United States, abortion is a safe and legal way to end a pregnancy. To find out more about your abortion options, call your local Planned Parenthood Health Center or visit PlannedParenthood.org.
The problem is that it's very easy to use as a way to get secret money into politics.
Grants to other groups that are spending in the same races, et cetera, et cetera.
The idea that these groups don't have to disclose their donors goes back decades to when the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, was being routinely threatened with violence.
After they helped organize the Montgomery bus boycott in support of Rosa Parks, it became illegal for the NAACP to operate in Alabama.
Their members were being targeted with bombings, shootings, and beatings. The state of Alabama was trying to force the NAACP to disclose its donors. The aim was, we want your donors so that we can intimidate them so they don't give you money anymore. The Supreme Court decided that this was an intimidation tactic, that it was something that would chill free speech. But now, what's happening is that you have a sliver of the American public, by and large, white, rich men, who are saying, we're just like the NAACP. If we have to disclose our contributions to these politically active nonprofits that are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in elections, we could be threatened. So the dichotomy here is kind of absurd.
Since Citizens United, there's been close to $1 billion that has been spent by dark money groups.
The core issue with dark money is that we don't know the donors. The only sort of thing that we can hold on to is those rare instances where the groups accidentally disclose something. Or you'll find a tax filing for another group, a trade association like U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers of America.
Pharma stands for the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. They are probably the most powerful lobbying industry trade association in Washington. Pharma all by itself, it has a budget, the last time we checked, of almost $500 million a year. It's all about promotion and lobbying and political campaigns. In the 2016 election, a lot of Republicans were promising to repeal Obamacare, get rid of it, and replace it with something else. Didn't like it. It was socialistic. It was bad for Americans.
Obamacare is a total disaster.
Millions of Americans about to see their premiums go through the roof.
And Democrats are still defending it.
The Affordable Care Act is something that Democrats have to be proud of.
Just imagine what Hillary Clinton would do with a Democrat-controlled Senate. We can't let that happen. Help us protect the Republican Senate majority.
There was a lot of political rhetoric to repeal the Affordable Care Act. And so people wanted to know, where does the pharma lobbying group stand on this? We had the CEO to our office and we said, what do you think? And he told us, we don't have a position. We're neutral, we're watching the process, but we don't have an opinion. But when we looked behind the scenes, we found they were giving millions of dollars to a dark money group that, in fact, was opposed to Obamacare. American Action Network, AAN.
Obamacare puts bureaucrats in control. The Republicans' plan puts patients and doctors in charge. Obamacare stuck families with soaring premiums. The new plan provides more choices and lower costs.
Repeal and replace Obamacare.
Tell your congressman to vote with President Trump.
What is American Action Network? They're a nonprofit. They're run by Republicans. The guy who's a chairman used to be a senator from Minnesota.
To win the battle of ideas, we need Americans willing to step up and to lead.
American Action Network. They got $6 million from the Pharma lobbying group just in 1 year. This is dark money. So how do we know where it came from? The answer is that the dark money groups themselves don't have to disclose the identity of their donors, but the trade associations like Pharma are required once a year to make a list of people they give money to. So that's how we found that out. It was hypocritical. They wanted to have their public face saying one thing, and they wanted to have their money behind the scenes saying another thing. The problem that so many people have with dark money is it allows you to play a double game like this.
Every single day in Washington and in state houses around the country, politicians go to work knowing that if they make one wealthy interest angry or one wealthy individual angry, that could result in millions of dollars being spent.
I used to get made fun of a lot because almost everything I did were these complicated flowcharts. But that's...
Most Americans just don't have enough time to understand tax law and campaign finance law.
Some time for questions.
That protects these groups. To some extent, it would almost benefit us if it was literally bags of cash that wealthy people were giving in secret to politicians, because people would understand that more.
We also make it a habit to ask for a copy of what's known as
the question is the institution able to do what its purpose is? The democracy was supposed to be a system that was open equally to all. And of course, that means that if you have a system that filters on the basis of wealth, you have a corruption of the democracy.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The only thing that can stop this corrupt machine is you.
I was actually very excited when Donald Trump became the first leading Republican candidate in a generation to make the corrupting influence of money a core part of his message.
I will tell you that our system is broken. I give to many people. Before 2 months ago, I was a businessman. I give to everybody. When they call, I give. And you know what? When I need something from them, 2 years later, 3 years later, I call them. They are there for me.
And he seemed to commit himself to the idea of fundamental reform. Now, I'd always thought he was a bit of a fraud, so I never really believed that's what he would do. But what was important was that the message resonated with Republican voters.
Trump is different because he doesn't have to answer to any donors, any lobbyists.
He touched a nerve with a lot of voters who felt like they weren't being represented by corporatized Washington, and I kind of agree. I mean, Democrats are no saints here either, and you know, we just have to fix this. But yeah, he obviously touched a nerve.
He declared that he knew how the political system works. He knew that it was broken, and talked publicly about the fact that he was self-funding his campaign.
I'm doing one thing that I don't know that I get much credit for, but I must say a lot of people do like it. I'm self-funding. I'm putting up my own money. Nobody has me. I'm working for you. I'm not working for anybody else. Good luck.
As the 2016 election progressed, President Trump stopped self-funding his campaign. He turned more to the influence of wealthy donors. And he accepted the support of super PACs.
We're going to be working again. We're going to have great jobs again. We're going to make America great again for everyone. Greater than ever before. Rebuilding America Now PAC is responsible for the content of this message.
After taking office, it's only gotten worse. Donald Trump, in every possible way, has embraced mega donors, has embraced super PACs, has embraced dark money groups. I don't fully believe that President Trump is entirely immune from the influence of wealthy political donors.
Right at the end of 2017, the Republicans in the United States Congress passed a law changing greatly the tax system here in the United States, basically reducing taxes greatly for the very wealthy and for big corporations.
President Trump and Republicans in Congress today rolling out the biggest rewrite of the tax code in a generation.
This is a middle income tax reduction.
But it's not necessarily that clear cut. The bill slashes the corporate tax rate to 20% from 35%. It eliminates the estate tax, helping wealthy Americans.
I myself am much more wealthy than I was before that because I invest in stocks. The companies I invest in, Apple, Google, Amazon, they make a lot more profits because they pay a lot less taxes. So people like me, who didn't actually do anything different, are much more wealthy than we were back in 2017.
When the Republicans passed the Donald Trump's tax cut, there was a member of Congress from New York who said, I've spoken to my donors and they've told me if we don't get this passed, I should never call them again. So he's there openly admitting that what's driving him and what should drive Congress is what the funders of campaigns care about, not what the ordinary American needs or what would help the economy or help the nation.
Money buys access. That's why we have so many responses from our government to every problem. The solution is lower taxes on rich people. The coronavirus is coming. What does the administration want to do? Lower taxes for rich people.
As small businesses and individuals struggle to obtain federal aid, the wealthiest are poised to reap tens of billions of dollars in tax savings.
And that's not necessarily the right answer, because that's causing our inequality in our country to get worse and worse and worse. And that's not good. That's not good for the long term. That's not what I want for my country.
In the race for the White House, Joe Biden is officially the Democratic Party nominee for president.
What we believe, and maybe most importantly, who we want to be, it's all at stake. We stand together, finally as one America, we'll rise stronger than we were before. I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
In the 2020 election cycle, we did, at the beginning, we saw almost every major Democratic presidential candidate taking a number of voluntary pledges. They refused to accept money from corporate PACs, and many candidates at the very beginning of the election cycle refused the support of super PACs. As the presidential campaign progressed, these pledges began to fall away. Joe Biden was the first major candidate to accept the support of a super PAC.
Stand up, take it back. We can, in fact, do anything we set our mind to.
That was back in early winter of 2019. He accepted the support of Unite the Country, which was set up by former campaign aides, funded by large Biden campaign funders.
This is the United States of America.
On Saturday, the Republican National Committee announced a record monthly fundraising haul of $74 million for the Trump campaign. That is $6 million fewer dollars than the $80 million raised by the former vice president's campaign.
When people talk to me about their discomfort with how much money it takes for Democrats to win elections, I tell them that we need the money to win the elections under the current rules, and then if we have the majority, we could change the rules and change how money is used and how it impacts elections. But this is like a wrestling match. If your opponent is allowed to use certain moves, then you probably need to use those same moves.
If we don't solve the corruption We can't solve the tax catastrophe. We can't solve the minimum wage problem. We can't solve healthcare. We can't solve any of them.
I have long been very passionate about campaign finance reform in America.
It's going to take a while, and maybe 10 years won't do it. To get this passed, we need to be active. We need to be on our feet.
That's what our current system does. And in that system, good people will say, no, I would feel bad if I gave my politician a whole bunch of money and then in return said, hey, I want you to make things right for me, right? But evil people are like, oh yeah, let's do that. I like the corruption. This is why Move to Amend proposes going around the Supreme Court. We need to amend the Constitution.
Her name is Quinn Nystrom. So come on up here. Cameras are welcome.
I support amending the U.S. Constitution to make clear that corporations and other artificial entities do not have constitutional rights and that money is not speech and campaign spending should be limited through regulation. I don't think our founding fathers intended for our elections to be this way.
It's very difficult to do, to adopt a new constitutional amendment. Well, you have to get it through the legislature. It has to pass Congress, and then we need 3/4 of the states to have adopted it. It could happen. I don't anticipate it's going to happen anytime soon.
What happened if you instituted a system that took the money out, and then what are you left with then? And would people be happy with it? No. If you take the money out of the process, you end up limiting the speech, and you end up limiting the public's ability to get to the root of the issues.
I'm afraid that our country is going to devolve into a state with a few rich people and lots of poor people, and the poor people are just going to give up and not take it anymore. That kind of system did not end well for the rich people in France a few hundred years ago, and I'm afraid it's not going to end well in the United States for the next generation.
No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
This country has become profoundly undemocratic.
No justice, no peace.
And what happens when voters feel as if the normal processes don't work?
No justice, no peace.
They have no choice but to take to the streets and to protest.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
The system is absolutely broken right now. The house is burned down and the foundation is broken. We can build the foundation back. We can build the frame of the house back. It might not be in perfect condition afterwards, but we can certainly do much better than we're doing right now.
The thing we could do tomorrow is to give every citizen a voucher. The idea of a voucher is the government gives everybody a coupon, or maybe a booklet of coupons. So if the coupon is a $100 coupon, and the candidate gets the voucher or the coupon from the citizen, and they turn it in for cash. So you radically shift the power from the 150,000 who now fund campaigns to the millions who would have the access to vouchers to help fund their campaigns.
The moneyed interest, they want us to give up. They want us to feel defeated. They want us to feel, oh, it's all rigged, money's gonna win, never a chance. Who's got the most money, they're always gonna win. Well, no, we actually still have votes, and together, if we organize, we can win. We can use the power we still have to win and protect our democracy and bring it back, make it stronger.